and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
You're listening to JoCo Community Radio.
Nowhere but Texas, that's where I'll be. Get home's the answer to all my dreams. I know one thing, God calls me. Nowhere but Texas is where
Good morning, Johnson County. Welcome to this week's episode of the County Pulse. I'm guest hosting today. My name's Greg Cooper, and I'm filling in for the Burleson Mayor Chris Fletcher. He's doing Burleson city business today. He's out taking care of the community that he was elected to serve. He's the regular host here on the County Pulse, and the goal is simple of the County Pulse. We connect the heartbeats of Johnson County. The County Pulse airs most Tuesdays at 11 a.m. You can visit the JoCo Community Radio Facebook page to watch all the Johnson County community radio shows live or see replays. And also you can go to www.jococommunityradio.com where Apple and Android apps are available. Tune in to get the ins and outs of Johnson County, Texas. Again, today I'm your host, or your guest host, Greg Cooper. I have a normal show called Texas Transparency Project that does local, municipal, city, and state politics on Thursdays at 5 p.m. if you're interested more in that lane. But before we start with today's show, we want to remind everyone that today is the first day of early voting. So we are in a primary election, and primary elections are not usually don't usually have a lot of horsepower behind them here in Johnson County, being overwhelmingly conservative. But there's a lot of issues on the ballot today. There's a lot of candidates, and there's a lot of disparity between their platforms. So get out and learn about the candidates. Early voting is from March 1st or through March 1st. It starts today. And you can vote at any of the polling places within the voting areas. March 5th is election day, and you must vote in your precinct on March 5th. But definitely get out and vote. A lot of sacrifices made for us to have that right. Educate yourselves and take advantage of the rights that we enjoy here in America. So today on the County Pulse, we're discussing a topic that impacts all of us, all of our neighbors, all of our children, all of our animals, and more. It's a serious health issue. It can impact the ground, water, crops, literally the entirety of the environment. While Johnson County is the epicenter, it will most likely prove that it extends far beyond Johnson County. Last Friday, on February 16th, the County Commissioner's Court here in Cleburne called a special meeting with a single agenda item for a presentation by the Precinct 4 Constable's office. And it involved uncovering some health issues that is going on in an ongoing investigation. And they felt that the health issues were serious enough that once they had the data available, it rose to the level to make the public very aware of it so they could take action to protect themselves while this investigation is ongoing. The Honorable Troy Fuller, the Precinct 4 Constable, and his Environmental Crimes Section lead, Detective Dana Ames, presented evidence regarding what is known as biosolids being spread on rural farmlands and how it impacts our health, the environment, land, water, animals, and more. This is an ongoing investigation. It's very important everybody understands that this investigation is in its infancy. It's going to expand, and it's going to, unfortunately, probably lead down a very dark road long term for our rural communities. And again, the information rose to the level to where it was very apparent that the public needed to be aware of this, because there's some things that we can do to begin to protect ourselves and hopefully mitigate some of the damage that this health crisis is causing. But however, Constable Troy Fuller's Precinct 4 office, they felt compelled to notify us And again, Detective Ames at a Precinct 4 Constable's office was leading the investigation. It's been going on for over a year, I believe.
Yes.
So before we get to the investigation, let's talk about Precinct 4's constable and the office. So Johnson County Precinct 4 Constable's office is led by the Honorable Troy Fuller. He was elected to office in November 2020. Constable Fuller served at the Johnson County Sheriff's Office for 26 years until he retired in August of 2020. And Constable Fuller began his law enforcement career in August of 1983 in the state of Florida. He has over 37 years of law enforcement experience. And the Precinct 4 Constable's office serves the citizens of Burleson, Joshua, Briar Oaks, Alvarado, Grandview, Venus, Coyote Flats, and Cleburne. So the Precinct 4 Constable's office is currently located in the historic courthouse in downtown Cleburne, room B6, if I remember correctly. The operational structure of the constable's office performs a wide variety of law enforcement and civil functions, including patrol, environmental enforcement investigations, writs, warrant service, and courtroom security. The department's sworn law enforcement personnel includes 4 full-time sworn peace officers and 3 reserve peace officers.
Yes.
Who all serve as deputy constables for the Johnson County and beyond. The department provides safety and protection to its citizens via community-based policing and proactive law enforcement efforts. The constable's office also conducts investigations into environmental crimes, and that's going to be the topic of today's show. That involves illegal dumping and public nuisances, which are resolved by utilizing the entire law enforcement spectrum, whether through hopefully education, if not compliance, but up to criminal case referrals. So today's show, we are honored to introduce 2 members from Precinct 4 Constable's office. Again, the Honorable Troy Fuller and Detective Dana Ames. Both were instrumental in the investigation that was the ongoing investigation, but the health crisis that was released last Friday at the Commissioner's Court. And they reported and presented some serious health issues regarding the biosolid dumping in and around Johnson County. So Constable Fuller, Detective Ames, welcome to the County Pulse. Please tell us a little bit about yourselves and how you got started in the constable's office. Constable Fuller, you first, sir.
Well, I've been, I guess some years kind of increased since the bio was written, but I'm getting ready to head into my 40th year being a law enforcement officer. And I've really enjoyed every moment of it. Like you said, I spent 26 years at the sheriff's office before I retired. And I felt, people started reaching out to me back in that 26 year. And I'd really never considered politics, but they started reaching out to me thinking that I would be a good leader for the constable's office and things that they saw that they didn't like. And really, I've heard this mentioned before. I felt like it was a calling. I felt like it was something that maybe God intended me to do, because there were things that were just not being done right. And it allowed me to bring my expertise into it. Since starting the constable's office, I was elected. Like I said, I began my term in 2021, and we still do. Initially, we did not have the environmental position. It was in the sheriff's office, and I wrote the grant originally that initiated the environmental program in the sheriff's office. And initially, it was started by Steve Shaw, and in about 2012. Dana came over and was hired, and she started out, but eventually ended up in investigations, working environmental crimes. So she's gained a wealth of knowledge over the years. One of the focuses we have when we work environmental crimes is working public nuisances and illegal dumpings. And regardless of what people may say, the primary focus of getting, and I know I've said this before, is that the primary focus of environmental crimes is to get compliance and cleaning it up. The importance in that is that by gaining this compliance is that we basically get people to opportunity to educate them that you mentioned, and also we get the opportunity to get them to voluntarily comply with taking care of the problem that's facing the community. And we've had tremendous success being able to get that done. And it ultimately it saves the taxpayers dollars, because what happens is if the county became involved in the abatement process or actually taking responsibility for cleaning up the property, obviously you as a taxpayer, me as a taxpayer, it could cost thousands of dollars each year and really impact our budget.
Well, and something like environmental crimes and things like that, people can be doing things and they don't understand the second that there are effects. They don't see the numbers. So,
Correct.
Anytime you can gain compliance with the law when things are being done, it's a much more streamlined. You have buy-in from the people. You're not having to force it, by behind a gun. So it's absolutely good that's where it starts with this. And you're in the middle of an election, sir. So constables in Texas are elected positions. They lead the office. They're very similar to a sheriff, and you're in the middle of an election right now. Is that correct?
That is correct.
How's your election going?
I feel really good. I mean, I've had the beautiful opportunity to meet a lot of good people. I've it's something, when I go out to do my job every day, I've always tried to be a leader from the front end. So actually being able to get it and be able to meet people and talk to people and visit with them and find out the situations that they're facing. And over these last 4 years, it's not just because it's a political climate right now. It's over the last few years. I mean, I've developed great relationships with people and been able to, foster them and help them out in situations, both environmentally and just personally, if there's problems that need to be addressed.
So my regular show is very in tune with the local politics, and I go to lots of different events. And one of the things that really impresses me with some of how you've been campaigning is you've really shed light on the fact that some of your job is doing evictions and doing court service and stuff like that. But you make it a point to offer resources
Absolutely.
to those people
Yes.
instead of just dumping the bad news on them. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you came up and why you felt that was important to lead people to solutions and resources, opposed to just delivering, bad news that sometimes comes and needs to be done by a law enforcement officer?
Right. Well, sometimes we hit people. I mean, even as a deputy, responding out to a call, you hit a bad situation, and it's hard to take a positive light away from it because people encounter you originally in a crisis situation. So when we go out to evictions and really when we go to do the writ of possession, which is basically.
So what is a writ of possession?
A writ of possession, there's two sections to an eviction. First is called a forcible detainer, which means we're actually serving the paperwork, informing people that there's been a court date established and that they're going to have to appear in court to present both sides of the story. I mean, that's part of our justice system. The writ of possession is the part where everything's kind of been decided in court. And at that point, you're going out to return the property back over to, whoever's responsible for it, whether it be the owner of the property or it could be the property manager or whatever. And so you're going out to restore their possession of the property back to them.
Fair enough. So Detective Ames, you head up the environmental section of Precinct 4 Constable's office.
Yes.
Tell us how you got involved with Constable office, your law enforcement career, and why you were gravitated and were drawn to the environmental crimes. It doesn't sound like the sexiest thing in law enforcement.
Yeah.
Everyone, thinks of SWAT kicking in doors and cops on TV.
Yes.
Tell us why this is important and what your calling was to it.
Well, actually, I started my career with the Johnson County Sheriff's Office in 2011. And just like everybody else, you go through patrol, you work your way through the ranks. In 2015, I became a detective for the Sheriff's Office, and I worked various crimes. One of those areas of my specialty was environmental. And what drew me to that? Captain Fuller.
Captain, as a sheriff, okay.
Captain Fuller, who had created the program. Detective Shaw was, at the time, the only investigator. You have to understand, we've had limited resources to deal with environmental crimes in Johnson County. Typically, we've had maybe one or two. That's it. Every once in a while, like the school resource officers would come in and assist, during the summertime when school was out. But for the most part, it's always been one, maybe two investigators investigating all environmental crimes for the entire county, which is huge.
Even at the sheriff's
Even at the
office?
sheriff's
Okay.
office, even at the sheriff's office. And so what ended up happening was I was over missing persons, I was over environmental crimes, and then anything else that would come, if you catch
Jack
it.
of all trades.
Yes,
of
if you catch it,
investigations.
you clean it.
Fair enough.
And so, I've been blessed. I've been blessed to be able to work for two amazing organizations with great leadership in both. I attribute a lot to Troy Fuller. He created the environmental program, both at the sheriff's office and then as the population has exploded here in Johnson County.
Absolutely.
This affects everything. This affects environmental crimes. This affects persons crimes. This affects people crimes. This affects traffic. This affects everything. We have had an explosion in our population. And so with me being over at the sheriff's office, an environmental investigator, as well as all these other things, there was no way to give my undivided attention to environmental.
So at the sheriff's department, you two worked together.
Yes.
Did some environmental stuff.
Yes.
You have a calling, run for elected office, become precinct 4 constable. There's no environmental section set
Correct.
up. What drove you to have the foresight and the wisdom to see the need for something like an environmental crime section? Here again, it's not top of the list of what everybody thinks about. So what led you to drive to support and to really focus on something like environmental crimes?
There's been a problem for a long time, in the rural community. I mean, you get people come out into the rural areas and they all of a sudden they have this freedom.
Yes.
And when they have this freedom, they don't really mean, most people don't mean no harm by anything that they do, but this is my property. This is what I can have. And my grass, it don't matter if it gets tall, and they don't think about the impact that it has on rodents. Dana mentioned it just briefly, but I mean, at the sheriff's office, what it basically ended up happening is, when I started there, we couldn't even work our own crime scenes. We basically had to call in. I remember we worked a homicide over in the Lillian area, and we had to call in Parker County to come over and work our crime scene for us. So as time progressed on, I mean, I started sitting on the North Central Texas Council of Governments and their grants, grading grants for other people. And as I did that, I started seeing the needs of what we didn't have. And environmental is just one part of that.
Yes.
Of things we didn't have. So
you were able to get a grant
Mhm.
to help stand up the section. How did that work?
Well, I mean, I've written several grants. I basically learned how to write grants. So I became kind of a self-taught grant writer. One of the things that they had that was of interest, man, we were experiencing a large, almost a disproportionate in comparison to a lot of places, is the amount of calls we were having for illegal burning, illegal dumping, public nuisances, and things of that nature.
So you went out and found money for it.
I went out and found money, and
Good for you.
And the good thing is, it costs the taxpayer $0 up front.
That's awesome.
I mean, obviously the position, and Dana ending up back in 2021, in that October, we had the budget year. And so we got to talking about it. And the one thing that when I took office that I was interested in is bringing in environmental back. It was just kind of a goal, because it's something that's you can't. I mean, the sheriff's responsible for the enforcement.
Everything.
I mean, people talk about, well, we can do this, we can do that, but the ultimate responsibility is our county government set it up to where the sheriff's office handles the enforcement for Johnson County.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's where the allocation of resources to detectives, deputies, CVE units, when they had them, we had school resource off, mental health, just everything enforcement wise is funneled into the sheriff's office.
Well, and I think it's really important that everybody understands that, when we think of crime, we think of an immediate significant impact to a victim. And environmental crimes is a delayed, slow onset quality of life over time.
Yes.
So it's very difficult for a politician who's in the moment controlling a budget, and people to really have the foresight to think longer term beyond their next term of office,
Right.
on where they put resources. And
Right.
and so thank you for having a little bit of vision in being able to lean forward to things that could significantly affect, and we're getting ready to get into this investigation here,
Yes.
significantly affect quality of life long term, and potentially even end life long
Yes.
term. Is it fair to say that? So thank you for both of you for having a longer term vision in getting into a slog grind opposed to just immediate gratification of solving crimes and things like that. So
Yes.
thank you for that.
Let
So
me, if you don't mind, I
absolutely.
just want to add something here. So, from 2016, when Detective Shaw retired, it left me as the only environmental crimes investigator. And that remained that way up until 3 months ago. And so, um, part of the goal with the commissioners and with Constable Fuller with bringing this over was because I'm investigating a myriad of things,
Sure.
so many things. Um, Being able to solely focus your attention on environmental um, was critical because you're right. This does impact health. It impacts property value. It
Yes.
impacts neighbor relationships. It impacts everything.
Yes.
And so, a lot of times, the environmental crimes gives us a front seat into people's lives that are going through extenuating circumstances where they really need to have that human contact and that assistance to bring up their quality of life and to help them through difficulties that they're going through.
Well, it's fair to say that most constables' office don't have an environmental crime section.
100%. It's a rare thing.
So Johnson County is especially precinct 4 is really an epicenter for things
Yes.
that can really expand and spread
Yes.
beyond that. So thank
Yes.
thank you guys for having
Yes.
the foresight in that. So last Friday,
Mm.
single agenda item special meeting don't happen very often. Usually good news doesn't come out of those.
Right.
There you guys released information on biosolid waste being dumped on properties in Johnson County that has significantly affected people in Johnson County. And it looks like it's going to be a lot more. It's not isolated as it's going to look
No.
like. Is it fair to say?
No.
So tell us what led to that investigation here.
Okay.
And we'll get some background before we head into the nuts and bolts of it.
Okay. So, do you want to take it or you want me to?
Well, I mean, I think initially what happened is, first of all, when Detective Ames does environmental crimes, she doesn't go out and serve papers. Maybe 3 or 4 times in
Yeah.
her 3 years here have a paper that's in her area. So she does environmental crimes. When she came to me back in December, I mean, she was all visibly upset. And of course, at that point we really didn't know what we were getting into, and we almost kind of prepared ourselves for the unknown, what we were getting
Yes.
ready to venture into. But when she said it, she says, and I've had this type of call in the same area before. And I
So
said,
tell us about the call. Tell us
Okay.
about the call. Explain to us what
So,
drove this road.
this call in December of 22 was our victim complaining that he couldn't breathe, that his wife couldn't breathe,
yes,
that the neighbors couldn't breathe, that this whole area that he was in had gotten filled up with smoke. And so, he believed it was from biosolids that had been placed across the street from him.
So this is out rural outside of Grandview.
Yes,
Okay.
just outside of Grandview. Prior to that, he had complained in 2018 about biosolids. It was not the Class A, I don't believe. I believe it was the Class B biosolids that was
Yes.
being applied at that time. But the smell was horrific. Even though this was kind of a smell related complaint on this one, it was different in the sense of this isn't just the smell. I can't breathe. And there's smoke. There's something you can physically see. Whereas with the Class B biosolids complaint, I couldn't see smoke. And so I'm like, I don't know, I mean, I hadn't had luck before, Constable Fuller and I have addressed this before. And so we, on the Class B biosolids, basically it was legal.
So we're talking a lot of technical terms here. Class A, Class B biosolids. So individual property owner, rural Johnson County and out by Grandview, has across the highway on a neighboring property something's being dumped.
No, it's
You're
not across the highway. It's across the street.
across the street. Okay.
Kind
Across
of
the
a-
street, something's being dumped. You're
Mhm.
calling it biosolids. What is biosolids?
Human waste.
Okay. So people have to poop.
That's right.
People have to poop. Poop
Right.
has to go somewhere.
That's right.
And so what's happening is poop.
Yes.
Something's happening to poop. It's getting transported and it's getting dumped on property, and it's
Correct.
being called biosolids.
Correct.
Tell us how it goes from what goes down my toilet, what you know about it, what goes down my
Mhm.
toilet to getting dumped on property to where now it's causing problems for individuals.
Okay.
Well, the poop factor includes a bunch of things that go down into that get flushed down into that water system that filters out.
Like a wastewater treatment plant.
It is.
Absolutely.
Yes. So literally everything, the best way to imagine this is you have wastewater treatment plants. Like we'll use the city of Fort Worth because that happens to be where this solid has come from.
That's the origination point. Okay.
That's right. So if you'll imagine this, everything that you flush down a drain or a toilet goes to the municipal wastewater treatment plant.
So this is shower water, dishwater, poop, pee,
This is things
everything.
from the morgue. This is things from the hospital. This is things from commercial industry. Everything
Okay.
that gets washed down a drain goes to the wastewater treatment plant. Then the wastewater treatment plant processes that and they separate the liquids from the solid.
Okay. Just
And
like a septic.
just
Most
like a
people know about septics here in Johnson
That's
County.
right.
Okay. So it's
And
separated.
so that's right. They separate it out. There's a drying process now that they're using that was supposed to make it an exceptionally wonderful quality product. And as a matter of fact, the biosolids that we're talking about here were called exceptional. It's supposed
Exceptionally bad. It sounds like.
well, and they call it beneficial land application. But if you talk to our victims, they say they haven't benefited in a good way from this land application of biosolids. And so that's a big question is who really benefits from this land application?
Fort Worth, they get rid of it.
This
if
is
you wanna-
true.
Yeah.
This is
So
true.
so it's dry. So it's dried out. It becomes an exceptional product. How does it get to Grandview?
Well, a couple different ways. So if it's a
We're getting ready to go on break.
okay.
Let's come back. We're here with the County Pulse. I'm guest hosting for Mayor Fletcher. We'll be back after the break.
Yeah, nowhere but Texas.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. Fast Track Student Loans can get your student loans out of default, stop any wage garnishments, stop collection calls, and stop seizure of your tax refund. Give yourself a break. Stop the stress and get your student loan payments down to as little as $25 a month based on what you can afford to pay. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395. 800-709-4395.
The voice of Johnson County, JoCo Community Radio.
Nowhere but Texas. That's where I'll be.
listen to all my dreams. I know one thing.
Good morning, Johnson County. We're back here with the Community Pulse. I'm your guest host today, Greg Cooper, filling in for Mayor Chris Fletcher. He's out doing Burleson business, taking care of the community he was elected to serve. So I appreciate the opportunity, and we're here with Precinct 4, the Honorable Troy Fuller and Detective Ames. They're Precinct 4 constables, and they're here. They're part of the breaking news with the environmental issues that have been identified in Johnson County. Before we get back to the biosolid human waste that's been spread over Johnson County, I want to remind everybody that JoCo Community Radio is proud to be the voice of Johnson County, Texas. It's live 24/7 on the TuneIn Radio Network. TuneInJoCo.com is the place to find all the ways to listen and watch, and the station app is also available for free on Android and Apple devices. Simply search your store, check out our lineup and more at www.jococommunityradio.com. This episode and more brought to you by Next Level Claims, making your insurance work for you. Reach out to your Texas sales rep at 844-TEX-HAIL. That's 844-839-4245. And be sure to dress your arms and more at thetiffy.com. And no, I cannot confirm that the tiffy.com wares will protect you from biosolid waste that we're talking about today. But we'll see if she can work in some protective gear for what we're talking about. So we're here again with Constable Troy Fuller and Detective Ames from Precinct 4. And we're talking about the ongoing investigation, which is nowhere near being completed, but it rose to the level that the community need to be made aware of some significant health concerns to begin to deal with it. And we're talking about human waste and everything that goes down the drain in a large urban area. In this case, it originated in Fort Worth. So think of Fort Worth Metroplex area and think of everything that goes down drains, restaurants, businesses, showers, hospitals, everything. And it goes in and gets processed. It gets separated into water and a solid. Solid gets dried out. And then that solid becomes what they determine as an exceptionally safe product. And then it gets transported and distributed to do what, Detective Ames or Troy Fuller?
Well, to fertilize agricultural land.
So they're taking everything that goes down the drain in Fort Worth, converting it to something that they're saying is safe and will help fertilize land, crops, and take care of the environment. Is that correct?
Correct. There's three. I'm just going to kind of move ahead here on this.
Sure.
There's three approved methods of disposal of these solids. One is land applying. It's called beneficial land application. The other is landfilling. You would have to actually landfill that at a special toxic waste landfill. So you can't just dispose it, which is interesting when you think about it. You can get rid of the solids at a toxic waste landfill. You can't go to a regular landfill. You just keep that in mind.
So I'm assuming that what is supposedly was dumped out in Grandview area and most of Johnson County was not supposed to be, and it wasn't supposed to be toxic.
It's not supposed to be toxic.
Okay. So some of it's toxic that goes to an appropriate place.
Well, but I mean, in getting rid for a city has to get rid of the solids, guys. So what do we do with all of the poop? Once you extract the relatively clean water from it, what the solids that you have left behind, what do you do with that? Well, there's three approved methods. Landfilling it, and it's not just any landfill, that would be a toxic waste landfill, incineration, and or applying it to the land itself agriculturally. The concept right there is confusing to most people when they say, well, if you have to take it to a toxic waste landfill, and they recognize that you wouldn't want to put that in a regular landfill, why would you think it's okay to apply it to agricultural land as fertilizer?
Maybe I'm missing something here. The same product has to be dumped at one of those things?
Yeah.
So it's not a different processing thing. Okay.
No.
So if it's not dumped for fertilizer, it goes to a toxic dump.
Right.
Okay. So that should raise massive red flags.
So that's been a real point of confusion for people but they call it safe. And yet when this rule
safe for Fort Worth where it leaves, maybe.
Yes, it is. Well, it's good for Fort Worth because they have to get rid of it. It may not be good. Apparently, 22% of Fort Worth's biosolids has been land applied to our agricultural property here in Johnson County. We are the largest recipients of their waste.
So let's talk about this waste and what's actually being dumped and what people need to be concerned about. So in the hearing last Friday, you talked a lot about two main things, a lot of chemical terms. We're going to try
Right.
not to get too chemically and into chemistry and all that stuff here today, but you talked about PFAS and PFOS, PFAS, PFOS.
Correct.
What are PFAS, PFAS, PFOS, and why should we be concerned about that? And how does it go from poop to being put on land that impacts us?
Okay. So everything gets washed down the drain. These are chemicals. PFOS, when you hear that term, who in the heck knows what that is? I certainly didn't. I know Constable Fuller didn't when this case came to us. But the truth is those are man-made chemicals, and there's thousands of them. And Dr. Bennett touched on it in her testimony. If you want to know more about that, you can watch the movie Dark Waters. It explains in great detail what these are.
So Dr. Bennett, she had a video. Was that live or was it a video?
It was a video testimony. Yes, sir.
So she had a video testimony for the commissioner's court that explained a lot of this. She's the big brain scientist that did this. So for those Dark Waters is a documentary. I've watched it, and it talks about Teflon.
Correct.
And how these same chemicals were in Teflon and impacted the Ohio River Valley significantly.
Yes.
So this is what a lot of people need to understand. This isn't directly related to your poop. It's what's combined with your poop all over the rest of basically a major city. Everything in the city goes down the same drain. And that's what people need to understand about this.
Yes.
So this is a lot more than poop. It's everything that goes in the same drain and gets distributed, turns into PFOS, PFOS, and that's when it starts to hurt us. Correct.
Well, actually, what it is, Greg, is these chemicals are used like you're talking about in the Teflon. So that was DuPont and 3M that created. 3M originally created these chemicals, and it was for like coating different things. They used
Teflon, not non-stick pans. Everybody knows non-stick pans.
That's right.
Yep.
And then it grew from there. So there were more applications of these chemicals that later ended up being developed and used. Scotch Guard, firefighting foam, adhesives. So there were a lot of different applications where these chemicals were used in that. It's these chemicals. They're called PFAS because of the fluorocarbon. But it's these chemicals that have been found in excessively, dangerously high concentrated levels in our soil, in our water, in our surface water, in our well water, in the tissues of the animals that we tested that are alarmingly high. These are dangerous. These are known cancer-causing chemicals. And so when the biosolids, the 503 rule that the EPA came out with in 1993, the only thing they focused on when they were testing was the metals and pathogens. So they wanted to make sure that you didn't have a lot of E. coli or salmonella, and they wanted to make sure that they kept these metals in balance, because if they got out of balance, they could have a very negative impact on human health.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was their primary focus. They did not. And unfortunately, guys, they still do not test for PFAS.
So, and this is why this is such a big deal. And this is why that we're ringing this bell. That they currently are not testing for this stuff and where it's being applied.
That's right.
And if you own a piece of property or you buy a piece of property where this was not applied, that has nothing to do whether or not your land, your water, your stream, your pond,
That's right.
your cattle, your food may be contaminated with, because, as you found out in Grandview, it wasn't dumped where you tested it. It was dumped on a neighboring property.
That's right.
So how did you correlate it being dumped on one place to affecting the victims of this investigation? How did you correlate that it wasn't? Because everyone wants to say, well, I don't dump it on my property, I don't have to worry about it.
Right.
Why should they worry about it? How did you correlate that?
Well, because it's point of origin.
So
clearly.
explain how
So,
that works.
When I showed up out there after the complaint came in, and I seen there's like 12 to 15 piles, huge piles of biosolids.
How many tons?
Approximately 450 tons.
450 tons. Okay.
Yes, of these biosolids that had been land deposited at that time, not spread, but deposited. They were smoking. Not all of them, but a good number of them were smoking. So, I have verified the complaint. The complaint is there's smoke coming. I can't breathe. It's making me sick. And so I started doing research at that point. What in the world? Because I've had complaints about biosolids in the past. It was about smell, which was a different kind of smell than this.
Yes.
And so I started doing research. It took several months really to dig into this to find it. And here's what I found: that properties were being negatively affected in other states, people's health, their livestock. They were having to cull livestock that had been exposed to these PFAS. And that was the first time that I learned about PFAS. And so I'm looking at Maine, and I'm looking at Michigan. I'm looking at Augusta, Georgia.
So you're finding other places nationally where this has been a problem.
Yes.
But here in Texas, it was unidentified at this time.
That's correct.
So now, would this have ever come to fruition without Precinct 4 Constable's office, led by Troy Fuller, having the foresight to start up and find grants for the environmental crime section? Is it?
I don't think so. I'll let my boss answer that, but I don't see that ever coming to fruition without his leadership.
I mean, we talked about resources. Without a resource of having somebody that does environmental crimes, maybe not. Where would they?
So the grant got funding for a dedicated investigator, which they didn't have before, which allowed you to put the time and energy and effort into this. Is that
Correct.
fair to say?
That's fair.
And the grant was several years ago. It wasn't like it just happened. I mean, several years ago.
So, I mean,
But I was
Johnson County
developed
could
from
potentially owe you a debt of gratitude for this foresight. So thank you. Here again, there's an election coming up. You know, educate yourselves on these candidates. Continuity in this ongoing investigation is very, very important. And being able to look at things that aren't really sexy and aren't really fancy and take a long time to materialize is really, really important as we consider this election. So,
you know, I think one of the big things is allowing the detective to have the ability to do her job.
letting the right people do what they're trained to do is very important. There's no question about that.
Because our commissioners played a good, heavy role in this as well.
Yes,
You know, because
absolutely.
when she came to me, going from there, I mean, our commissioners got heavily involved in that as well.
Yeah.
So what impacts to people, animals, etc.? Have you everyone say dirty water? Well, dirty water, that's hard to quantify. So what impacts to people, animals is a direct result of this?
It's horrendous. So the EPA not too long ago came out and said, hey, we're going to be regulating PFAS in drinking water, and we're going to regulate that. There's no acceptable safe limit on PFOA. Just understand.
So, okay. So let's talk about that. This is measured in parts per trillion.
That's correct.
And the way I understand is 1 part per trillion is basically 1 drop in the totality of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Correct. Okay.
Correct.
So 1 part per trillion is considered unsafe.
Correct.
4 is considered a no-go.
Right. But
4 parts per trillion.
But they're going to regulate to 4 parts per trillion. So because right now we can't get rid of all of it.
Correct. So 4.
Right.
So what levels did you find in water and livestock in the victims list? So 4 parts per trillion is regulated. 1 parts per trillion is unsafe. What levels did you see?
And some of the ponds, the combined total PFAS was over 1 million.
So over 1 million parts per trillion?
Correct.
So 1 million parts per trillion, 1 part per trillion is unsafe.
Correct.
What about livestock and fish?
So I'm going to go back to the well water too.
Okay.
So we also found it in the well water, and we also found Gen X, which is another constituent. Gen X is another chemical.
Okay.
That's a big deal chemical too, guys, because it was supposed to be better than the PFAS chemicals that we've been dealing with. And it's now showing up. I'll get to that here in a minute. But first thing that really scared us was the fish, because we eat fish.
Correct. People, there was I watched a guy trying to get a mud in, and he was worried about water runoff from a wastewater treatment plant affecting his pond.
That's right.
So yeah, we eat fish.
Yes.
It's a big thing
So
here.
we tested 2 fish. One of the fish tested over 74,000 parts per trillion. 74,000.
One is bad, 4 is regulated. 74,000 you
That's
found.
right.
Wow.
Yep. That's right.
Okay.
And
This
then
is
the other-
math. This is not like
no,
this is not even flirting with safe zones at
no,
all.
no.
Okay.
This is highly dangerous. The second fish was 57,000 parts per trillion. Now we've had cows dying. We've had horses dying.
So you brought up a stillborn calf in this hearing.
Yes,
Beef. Every Texan eats brisket.
that's how you eat brisket.
Every Texas eat brisket, and local beef is very important
Yes.
to our rural life
Yes.
and in our lives in Johnson County. What did you find in a stillborn? So for a stillborn calf, that means that this calf never ate anything that was on the ground, never drank any water.
That's
This came
correct.
from the mother. That's through what's
100%.
called the blood-brain barrier. That's a whole nother level of contamination and a whole
Yes.
nother level of seriousness in resiliency of these chemicals.
Correct.
Reality is. So what did you
So-
find in the cattle?
610,000 parts per trillion.
1 part per trillion is unsafe. 4 parts per trillion is regulated. You found 600,000 in a stillborn calf,
That's right.
and 50 and 40,000 or 70 and 40,000 parts per trillion fish.
74,000 and 57,000. Greg, to put that into perspective, the USDA did a study between 2013 and 2015 of about 588 fish.
Okay.
Of all of those fish that were tested in that study, none of them ever tested at the levels as high as our fish did.
So you talk about other places in the country where this PFAS has been tested in parts per trillion. What you're seeing here in Johnson County is astronomically higher
That's right.
than what's normally been out there
And
been caused problems.
And horribly, this particular victim, one of the victims, actually both of the victims, they did organic farming, so they never used biosolids. They
So
were
this is being spread from other
Yes,
properties.
they've been
Okay.
ruined.
All right.
They've been ruined. They've been wiped out.
So 2 more things we want to get to in this show, and we're gonna have this crew back to talk a lot more about this. This problem's not going away. Time is an anesthetic, and we're not going to let this die and people become comfortable with things that are slow acting as this, but because it is a quality of life issue. But 2 more things we want to get to before we go here. One is you see municipal utility districts popping up all over Johnson County. There's 3 or 4 going in Godly. Godly ISD is getting ready to donate land for a municipal utility district that will support a high school, elementary school, middle school, and a large community of homes. That all of that high school stuff, all the science labs, all the ag at those at those schools, all the stuff that goes down the drain in homes that's going to support in this municipal utility district. That's all going to be processed the same way. Is it fair to say that anybody that's considering doing any type of a municipal utility district or any type of wastewater issues should really take pause and make sure they know what they're doing and really look at this stuff? Is it fair to say that
Yeah.
we can't say that this stuff and how it's always been done is safe at this point?
Yes.
Correct.
I feel very comfortable in saying that. Actually, what I want to say is the big government failed us.
Yeah,
The-
because it's
The
it's-
EPA
yeah.
failed us. TCEQ failed us. These are our regulatory agencies, guys.
So how they would be doing it today, it's
That's
now
right.
not safe.
It's
And we
not.
know that now.
It's not.
Okay.
And so if we continue to do business as usual and we don't take this seriously, we're going to be playing catch up. We're talking about super fun type cleanups here. This is huge. And we're just scratching.
Talking about property value issues big time potentially. 'Cause
yes.
You can't develop on property that's
Oh,
been slated to be
uh,
developed.
One caution that I would give people is this. If you live out in the county, you can shoot off fireworks. It's legal to shoot off fireworks. So it's the 4th of July, you're shooting off fireworks. However, your firework lands on your neighbor house and you burn their house down and you maybe even injure them. Well, you may not go to jail for that. However, you will be held liable for that. They have the right to hold you liable. So for everybody out there that's dealing with these mud districts, just understand you might continue with business as usual, but there's a lot of liability in that and harms that are coming against the people. There was a
Especially
lawsuit.
now the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
a
I mean, you
lawsuit that
can't
was filed
claim
last
ignorance
week
anymore.
against this very situation. And so that's just
Do you think there's more lawsuits coming?
I can guarantee you it's a flood.
Wow. So we talked about the solid part. There's also what is deemed clean water. I know behind Mountain Valley, over 1 million gallons a day gets pushed out. Has the water runoff been tested for PFOS? Because you were narrow focused. Your investigation was on a certain thing. Do we know if the water coming out of these stuff is safe in any way?
Okay, so here's how you have to think of it. When the the water comes into the waste treatment plant and they are filtering and they are doing certain things to make that water cleaner, it's actually concentrating. These chemicals are actually concentrating in the solids.
Okay.
And so there's a process from where it gets from this point to that point. And all this runoff that is coming from these processes potentially have high levels. I think more testing is going to have to be done. And I encourage everyone, listen, everybody can test. So the
And
city
we're
of
going to talk about that here in a minute.
Yeah.
So finish with the
So-
runoff and,
so
and these
the-
muds and what the pause they
no,
should take.
No, so the water that's running over these ponds, that are running over these streams, that it's basically it's just hitching a ride down the road to somebody else's property, potentially has high levels.
And it's been proven that these last a long time. They do not break
They're
down.
pervasive.
Yeah,
They
last for a long time.
bioaccumulate. This is the largest studies that have ever been done in human history here in the United States on these chemicals. It is absolutely connected to multiple cancers, infertility, diabetes,
Thyroid issues. if I
thyroid
remember.
issues. I mean, so, if you're already suffering and every time you introduce more into your system and it bioaccumulates, that increases these comorbidities that are going on in people's bodies. And so it is a quality of life issue. And the thing is that it's something that I didn't ask to have put in my body. You didn't ask to have put in your body. Our victims didn't ask to have put in theirs or their animals' bodies. We need to take a long pause and let the science catch up and get the testing done. Don't take the easy way out and say it's not required, so therefore I'm not going to do it. Well, if your fireworks burned your neighbor house down, then you might think of something that's coming along after this that it may cause you to want to pause.
Sure. So sticking with that mud issue, Johnson County, you're putting these muds in school districts, you're putting these muds in, you might want to take pause and make sure what you're doing is safe. And just because it's getting trucked away from where you're doing it doesn't mean you don't have a liability in where it's going. So before we get to the end of the show here, Constable Troy Fuller, in the tradition of how you've run Precinct 4, you've always offered resources on the back end of bad news. And this is some really bad news going on in Johnson County. You've always offered resources when people have to be evicted, when they're getting bad court news. And your environmental crime section, your Precinct 4 Constable's office, has resources for what the individual property owner can do. Can you talk us about some of those resources? We're going to get this posted later with some links, but it's Eurofin and Peer. Talk us about what people can do. And here again, just because it wasn't ever dumped on your property does not, if you're downstream in a lot of these streams out here, if there's a lot of runoff, or if it was just near you, this stuff spreads. So talk about some of the resources that in the tradition of Precinct 4 Constable's office loves to offer solutions to problems. So talk us about that.
So Eurofin's Laboratories is the laboratory that we use. They're world renowned, very respected. They conducted all of our testing. And so anybody can test their property with Eurofins. Individuals can do this. You don't have to be a municipality or a county government to do this. And so knowledge is power. I would highly recommend that people test their soil.
Go to the link.
Go to the link. We've got the link up actually on Constable Fuller's website, so it would be easier to find that perhaps.
Is that your website, Facebook group?
Yes.
Both?
Yes.
Okay. So this is Eurofin's Lancaster Laboratories. They're in Pennsylvania. They have a phone number. I'm going to give the phone number here. It's 717-656-2300. That's 717-656-2300. They can walk you through this process. What happens after the Eurofins things happens?
When they call Eurofins, they need to let Eurofins know that they want to test for PFAS.
That's important.
That's important.
Okay.
They have to say, I want to test for PFAS. They'll have them set up an account. You'll have to set up an account in order to do this. And then they'll send you the collection containers that you need. There's two different PFAS tests that Eurofins does. One is 32 and one is 70. We did PFAS 70, and that's just basically the number
Is
of
this a class A, class B?
It's
No, okay.
just the chemicals.
All right.
So when you're asking for the PFAS testing, there's only a certain number of PFAS. There's thousands of them, but there's only a certain number of PFAS that they can test for. So one is 32 and the other is 70. We went for
And here
70.
again, PFAS is a collection of all the products that man-made
It's the
products use.
chemicals.
Okay.
It's the man-made chemicals, correct.
So really quick, I don't mean to interrupt. It's Tiffany. I just want to be able to put this link in there for where they can get to this testing on Troy's Constable website. I don't see it there. Where is it?
It's part of you're in the Facebook page.
So there's a couple Facebook pages. One is the Constable's normal business page, and one's like his page where he's running for Constable. It's the regular business page that it's in.
Yeah, and it's attached as part of the information that was put out regarding the meeting.
Yes.
Okay, and what is your business Facebook page?
Constable, Johnson County Constable, Precinct 4, Troy Fuller, I believe.
Yes. If you type in Constable Precinct 4 in Johnson County, it should pull up.
I'll have it
So
for you, Tiffany,
real
in just a
quick,
second.
after they get the results back from Eurofins, they have to go to peer.
Correct.
So to get it interpreted.
Yes. Yes.
All right, we're going to put links in there too. We're sorry this is so slow. We're going to have this crew back to talk more about this. It's Eurofins to test, peer to interpret, PFAS. Don't forget it. Quality of life, long-term issue. Thanks for the Pulse of Johnson County. Detective Ames, good luck in your election.
From Burleson to Venus and Grandview to Godley, this is the voice of Johnson County. JoCo Community Radio.
Let's be honest. Wheelchairs are heavy, bulky, and ugly. If you carry a wheelchair in your car to take care of a loved one, you know how hard it is getting that clunky, old-style wheelchair in and out of your car.